20,000 years ago, Earth was in the grip of the last ice age. Northern Europe was buried under ice sheets over 2 miles thick. Massive glaciers stretched across North America. Sea levels were lower, winds were harsher, the world was drier, emptier, and quieter. And yet somehow, humans survived. Not only did they survive, they hunted, they raised children, they told stories, they crossed frozen landscapes with no roads, no electricity, no metal tools, no modern medicine, and no idea whether spring would even come, which raises a terrifying question. How did a species with fragile skin, no claws, no fur, and bodies designed for warm African climates survive winter that could kill a modern human in a single night? Because if you were dropped into the ice age with nothing but the clothes on your back, you probably wouldn't last 48 hours. The people who survived this world were not lucky, they were unbelievably skilled. And the deeper scientists look into how they lived, the more unsettling the answer becomes. Because Ice Age humans were not primitive, they were among the toughest people who ever lived. To understand how they survived winter, you first have to understand what winter actually meant back then. Today, winter is mostly an inconvenience. You complain about traffic, you turn up the heat, you wait for spring. But 20,000 years ago, winter was an annual extinction event. Food vanished, animals migrated, plants died, daylight collapsed. Temperatures in some regions dropped far below anything most populated cities experience today, and unlike modern humans, they could not escape indoors. Their entire survival depended on how much heat and food they could store to make it through those months filled with darkness. One mistake could kill their entire family. Anthropologists believe Ice Age groups often lived in small bands of around 20 to 40 people. That number mattered. Too small, and you didn't have enough hunters. Too large, and the land around you couldn't feed everyone. Every winter became a brutal balancing act, and the first challenge was simple: heat. But modern humans have forgotten how violent cold really is, because your body is basically like a furnace wrapped in wet tissue. It constantly burns energy to keep your body temperature around 98 degrees Fahrenheit. And when the environment starts stealing heat from your body faster than your body can replace it, your body's systems slowly begin shutting down. First your fingers, then your coordination, and then your judgment. Hypothermia is so horrifying, because people often don't even realize it's happening to them. Victims become confused, they start feeling sleepy, and some people even remove their clothes because their nerves begin malfunctioning and convince them that their body is overheating. Then they lie down, and they die. Ice Age humans understood this danger very deeply, not scientifically, but physically. Every winter someone probably froze to death. That's why fire became the center of human existence. At night, fire was not decoration, it was survival. Archaeologists have found ancient hearths in Ice Age shelters, layered with ash from fires that burned almost continuously. People organized their lives around protecting those flames, because restarting a fire in freezing wind without dry materials could mean death. And fire did more than provide warmth. It dried clothes, cooked meat, hardened wooden tools, melted snow for water, kept predators away, preserved morale. But fire alone wasn't enough. The real miracle was clothing. Humans survived the Ice Age because they learned to wear other animals. Most people imagine cavemen throwing rough skins over their shoulders like a cartoon. Reality was far more advanced. Scientists studying bone needles discovered that humans were sewing fitted clothing at least 40,000 years ago, not simple wraps, tailored garments. That distinction matters. Loose animal hides leak heat, fitted layers trap air, and trapped air is insulation. In some ways, Ice Age people understood winter clothing better than medieval Europeans thousands of years later. Animal fur became engineering. Reindeer hides were especially valuable because their fur trapped enormous amounts of heat. Even the hairs themselves were hollow, creating natural insulation. One properly prepared winter hide could mean the difference between life and death. But making those clothes was brutally difficult. First, the animal had to be hunted, then skinned, then scraped clean before the hide rotted, then softened using animal brains, fat, smoke, and endless physical labor. A single outfit could take weeks, and everything froze. Your tools froze, your fingers froze, wet hides froze into stiff boards, water froze, even breathing hurt. There are reports from modern Arctic explorers describing how inhaling extremely cold air can make your lungs feel like they're burning. Now imagine that every morning of your life. But perhaps the most extraordinary survival technology wasn't clothing, it was shelter. Because Ice Age humans didn't simply hide from winter, they redesigned the landscape around themselves. In parts of Eastern Europe, archaeologists uncovered circular structures built from mammoth bones. Not one or two bones, hundreds, massive tusks arranged into walls, skulls stacked into foundations, animal hides stretched across the top. These weren't random piles, they were engineered homes, Imagine what that means. A group of humans standing in a frozen world with temperatures far below freezing, building architecture from the remains of giant Ice Age animals. Inside, fires burned, people repaired tools, children slept, someone told stories while wind screamed outside. And the more scientists study these shelters, the more organized Ice Age society appears. Because surviving winter required planning months ahead. You needed fuel, food storage, migration knowledge, hunting coordination, tool repair, social cooperation. A lone human in the Ice Age was usually dead. Groups survived because information survived. Knowledge became as important as food. Where do the herds migrate? Which valleys block the wind? How thick does lake ice get? Which plants remain edible after frost? What animal fat burns longest? Every winter became a test of memory, and that memory was passed down orally. Stories were survival technology. A modern person might think mythology was entertainment. For Ice Age humans, stories carried maps, warnings, weather patterns, predator behavior, migration timing. A story about spirits in the northern hills may actually have meant, don't go there in winter, people die. And this is where the Ice Age starts feeling strangely unfamiliar, because the people living through it were mentally different from us in ways we rarely think about. Modern humans live surrounded by safety nets, grocery stores, heating systems, emergency services, forecasts. Ice Age humans had none of that. Every person had to become deeply aware of nature, not abstractly, directly. They noticed wind shifts, cloud texture, animal tracks, changes in bird movement, snow consistency. Tiny details could predict survival, and winter amplified every danger. A sprained ankle today is frustrating. 20,000 years ago, during winter, it could become a death sentence. A failed hunt wasn't disappointing, it threatened the entire group. This constant pressure changed human psychology. Researchers believe hunter-gatherers often developed extremely strong social bonds because isolation was so dangerous. Sharing food wasn't kindness, it was insurance. If you hunted successfully today, you shared, because next week, someone else might feed you. Human cooperation may have become humanity's greatest winter survival tool, and nowhere was that more obvious than during the hunt, because surviving winter meant solving a terrifying equation. The colder the environment became, the more calories the body needed, but the colder the environment became, the harder food was to find, which meant Ice Age humans faced a brutal paradox. Winter demanded more energy precisely when the world provided less of it, and that forced humans into one of the most dangerous activities in prehistoric life, hunting giant Ice Age animals, not for glory, for survival, because in a frozen world, one successful hunt could feed a group for weeks, and one failed hunt could mean starvation. Winter hunting in the Ice Age was not chaos, it was calculation, because the animals humans depended on were not weak. They were enormous, stronger than anything most people alive today have ever seen outside a zoo. Woolly mammoths, steppe bison, giant elk, reindeer herds stretching across frozen plains like moving rivers, and humans hunted them without guns. No metal, no engines, no horses, no maps, just sharpened stone, fire, coordination, and terrifying amounts of courage. For a modern person, it's difficult to understand how dangerous prehistoric hunting actually was, because today, food is passive. You buy it, you order it, you barely think about where it came from. But Ice Age humans lived inside the food chain. Every hunt meant entering the same landscape as predators, dire wolves, cave lions, hyenas, short-faced bears, animals that did not fear humans the way modern wildlife often does. In many parts of the Ice Age world, humans were not the top predator, not yet, which meant hunting was not just about killing animals, it was about competing against everything else trying to survive winter, and winter itself became the battlefield. Snow changed everything. Deep snow slowed large animals, ice redirected migrations, frozen rivers became highways, tracks remained visible for days. Experienced hunters could read snow almost like language. A broken crust meant fresh movement. A sharp track edge meant the animal passed recently. Wind-blown snow inside the print meant the trail was old. To survive the Ice Age, humans became masters of observation, and slowly over thousands of years, they developed hunting systems so effective that scientists still debate how they managed it, because physically humans should not have won. A mammoth could weigh up to 12,000 pounds. One swing from its tusks could crush ribs instantly. Even an injured bison could trample multiple hunters. Yet humans kept hunting them, successfully. The answer wasn't strength, it was endurance. Human beings evolved into one of the greatest long-distance animals on Earth, not the fastest, but among the hardest to exhaust. Our bodies cool efficiently, we sweat heavily, we can run for extraordinary distances without overheating, and Ice Age hunters weaponized that ability. Anthropologists call it persistence hunting. Instead of chasing prey in a short sprint, humans tracked animals for hours, sometimes entire days. An animal would run, the humans followed, the animal stopped to recover. The humans kept coming, again, and again, and again, until eventually the prey collapsed from exhaustion. Imagine the mental endurance that required, running through freezing wind across endless white terrain while carrying weapons, tracking blood spots, reading footprints, and knowing that if the animal escaped, your family might starve. This was not primitive behavior. It demanded intelligence, memory, communication, and patience on a level most people underestimate. But hunting large animals created another problem: meat spoils. And in a world without refrigerators, food preservation became one of the greatest survival skills humans ever developed. Ironically, winter itself helped. Frozen temperatures turned entire landscapes into natural freezers. Meat could be stored outside for long periods if protected from scavengers. Animal fat became incredibly valuable because fat contains far more calories than lean meat. This mattered enormously. Protein alone cannot sustain humans indefinitely. In extreme conditions, people can actually starve while eating large amounts of lean meat. Explorers later called this rabbit starvation. Without enough fat or carbohydrates, the body begins failing. Ice Age humans understood this instinctively. They prized marrow, brain tissue, organ meat, rendered fat. Nothing was wasted. Archaeologists have found bones cracked open specifically to extract calorie-rich marrow. To modern eyes, it can look brutal, but to Ice Age humans, wasting calories during winter may have seemed insane. Even animal skins became food during desperate times, because winter stripped life down to its rawest equation: energy in, energy out, and the margin between survival and death could become terrifyingly small. Scientists studying ancient skeletons discovered evidence of severe nutritional stress during harsh climate periods: growth interruptions in bones, malnutrition markers, disease. The Ice Age was not romantic. People suffered constantly, children died, injuries became permanent, teeth wore down early from rough diets and grit in food. And yet somehow, human groups continued moving, continued adapting, continued surviving, which brings us to one of the strangest realities of Ice Age winter: darkness. Not metaphorical darkness, actual darkness. In northern regions, winter daylight became incredibly short. Some areas experienced long periods where the sun barely rose above the horizon. Blue twilight replaced full daylight, and unlike modern humans, they had almost no artificial light. No streetlights, no windows glowing in the distance, no flashlights, no phones, just blackness, a kind of darkness most modern humans have never truly experienced. There are modern accounts from explorers in remote Arctic environments describing how psychologically overwhelming total darkness can become. People report anxiety, hallucinations, distorted sense of time, extreme emotional shifts. Now imagine living inside that darkness every winter for generations. Fire became psychological survival as much as physical survival. The hearth created a tiny island of certainty in a hostile world. Light, warmth, voices, movement. And this may be where winter changed the human mind forever. Because during those long nights, people did something extraordinary. They imagined worlds beyond the one they could see. And that matters more than it sounds, because imagination is expensive. It consumes energy, time, attention. A starving animal does not sit around creating myths. It survives moment to moment. Yet Ice Age humans painted cave walls, carved figures from ivory, and stared into firelight, telling stories while winter storms raged outside. Somewhere in that frozen darkness, the modern human mind was taking shape. Archaeologists have discovered tiny sculptures from the Ice Age so detailed they still unsettle researchers today. Small carved animals, human figures, symbols whose meanings are now lost forever. One of the most famous is the Lion Man figurine found in Germany, a statue carved from mammoth ivory over 35,000 years ago. Part human, part lion. Think about what that means. A human being living during the Ice Age imagined a creature that did not exist in nature, and then carved it into reality using stone tools. The ability to imagine things beyond immediate reality may have become humanity's greatest weapon against winter, because before humans could change the world physically, they first had to imagine different worlds mentally. And during the Ice Age, imagination may have been as important as fire. But winter also transformed the human body itself. Modern humans often assume people back then were simply like us but less advanced. That's misleading. Ice Age humans were physically extraordinary. Studies of ancient skeletons show many hunter-gatherers possessed incredible strength compared to the average modern person. Their bones were thicker, their muscle attachment points were stronger, their Their daily lives demanded constant movement. Even ordinary survival required insane physical effort, collecting firewood in snow, building shelters, walking miles through freezing wind, repairing clothing before frostbite set in. A modern gym workout was simply normal life for them, and the human body adapted accordingly. Scientists believe Ice Age humans also developed behavioral adaptations to survive cold more efficiently. Sleeping close together conserved heat, high-fat diets fueled endurance, fur clothing reduced energy loss. But there was another adaptation even more powerful: community. Because winter punished isolation brutally. An individual could fail, a group could recover. If one hunter was injured, others helped carry food. If one family lost shelter, another made room near the fire. Survival became collective, and this may explain one of the most important turning points in human evolution: compassion. Archaeologists have found ancient skeletons of individuals who survived severe injuries that would have been impossible to endure alone. Broken legs that healed, blindness, crippling diseases, people who lived for years despite conditions that prevented them from hunting effectively, which means somebody took care of them, fed them, protected them, kept them alive through winter. That changes the entire image many people have of prehistoric humans. They were not emotionless savages fighting endlessly for survival. They loved, they protected one another, and in a world cold enough to kill you overnight, those bonds became essential. And that may be the deepest lesson of the Ice Age. Humans survived not because we were individually powerful, but because we learned to survive together. And maybe that's why the Ice Age still feels emotionally haunting today, because somewhere deep down, modern humans recognize those people. And beneath it all, you still find the same nervous system staring into darkness, asking ancient questions. Are we safe? Will the people we love survive the winter? Those fears built humanity. And the people who endured 20,000 years ago were not superhuman. They were human in the rawest form possible, because against all logic, against starvation, predators, storms, darkness, and cold powerful enough to bury continents, they survived long enough for you to exist. And every modern human alive today carries the proof of that survival inside them, the descendants of people who made it through the longest winters Earth had ever known.